while I was setting up the camera, the boat turned itself around and was floating backwards downstream. Doesn't really matter. Sideways, backwards, forwards. The river's moving 6 miles an hour, maybe. Boat's gonna go 6 miles an hour no matter what direction it's facing. But when I want to paddle like this, it goes a little faster. I mostly do this. Sometimes I just sit and float, especially when it gets really hot. Might do that today. It's pretty warm right now. I've been on the river since 9-ish this morning. Coming up on noon. I've gone about 17 miles. I'm not quite up to 6 miles an hour, which would have gotten to me to 18 miles in 3 hours. But I've been messing around a little bit this morning. Took some time to pull ashore, get the GoPro mounted on the front of the boat, and get that recording a time lapse. We'll see if that's an interesting video or just annoying with the way the front of the boat tends to sway back and forth with each stroke. The stroke has two parts to it. The forward stroke, or the stroke that moves the boat forward. But because I'm paddling only on one side, that also tends to turn the boat. And if I let it, it would just keep turning around in circles. So there's a second part of the stroke right here where I flip the paddle from let's say perpendicular to the water to parallel with the water, and it becomes a rudder back there that I can use to steer the boat. And pretty much after every stroke, I give it a little tug like that, pull the bow back so that it's facing more or less where it was when I started the stroke. So it's a constant wiggling back and forth. Might even be able to see it in this video. The mountains behind me might be looking like they move left and right behind me as the angle of the camera shifts with the angle of the boat compared to me. I'm about let's see. I'm a little more than 167 miles from Dawson City. I know that because the map I'm using is a Dawson City to Circle map. And so the miles along the river are measured relative to Dawson City. Eagle was 100 miles from Dawson City, roughly 101 maybe. And I left Eagle yesterday at about noon. Covered about 58 miles, I think. Camped last evening at Nation's Cabin, a public use cabin. Built in 1937, if I remember right, by a guy named Chris Phonograph Nelson. Stories vary why he was called Phonograph. Some say it was because he talked incessantly when visitors came. Others say he had a phonograph in the cabin. I saw no evidence of that. Chris had a kind of a sad story. He did his best to attract a wife to join him in the cabin. Not a wife he already had. He tried to find a wife who would move in with him. In the cabin, which is very small, the size of a small room in a modern house, a large closet in a modern house. 8 by 14 maybe? I didn't pace it out, this is just my estimate. There's a wood stove, a couple kerosene lanterns to light the place. The National Park Service keeps it stocked with necessities like kerosene, firewood for the wood stove and for the campfire out front. He put some shelves on a couple of the walls. Somebody, maybe the Park Service, has provided some literature there. Some of it is just old books, Reader's Digest collection of short stories. I didn't look from what era. Some information on bears. There's a bear that frequents the cabin, so they want to make sure you're bear aware when you're living there. Follow all the rules relative to your own safety, but also the safety of the cabin. The bear's broken into it a couple times now. People who maintain the cabin prefer not to have to repair it after the bear has gotten in there. There's some information on mining in the area. I think one of the little pamphlets or magazines, I don't know what you might call it, is aptly named A World Turned Upside Down. An apt title both literally. The mining process takes what's under and puts it over. But also maybe metaphorically. A river valley that's been inhabited tens of thousands of years by humans subsistence living, trading, hunting, fishing, some agriculture. And then along came a gold rush. And the valley was flooded with mostly U.S. people. Well, I'm in the U.S. now in Alaska, but this story is not limited to where I am now, which is the Yukon Rivers National Preserve. It's the same story along this whole river almost. Everywhere I go, there's abandoned mining towns, abandoned machinery, and cabins like the one I stayed in. The Park Service maintains 5 or 6 of these old loggers or miners' cabins, hunter-trapper cabins, whatever they were doing to survive up here. And some of them were roadhouses. In the wintertime, the Yukon is the main artery, was, for sled dogs, teams, just walkers, anybody who wanted to get up and down the river. The winter was the time to do it. In the summer like this, there's only one way on this river, and it's down. Right now, with this paddle stroke I'm using, I might be going 2 miles an hour faster than the river, which puts me at 7.5 miles an hour right now. So if I stop paddling, the boat would drift 5.5 or 6 miles an hour. If I tried to turn around and paddle upstream at 2 miles an hour against a current that's going downstream at 5.5 or 6 miles an hour, the net result, I'd be going downstream at about 3 miles an hour. Nobody's going upstream. Now the steamboats could go upstream, and there were hundreds of them in this valley back then, bringing in supplies and equipment, food, more people. There's wrecks all over the place up here. There's so many sandbars, gravel bars, I think is probably a better name for what they are. But back to Chris's cabin. He built a bed in the cabin. He took sheets of wood. I didn't look carefully. Almost 100% guaranteed it wasn't plywood. Wide slabs. And basically nailed them to the corner, connecting it to 2 walls and providing a support on the resulting free 4th corner of the bed. Bed was pretty short. My feet hung off the end. I don't know if Chris used his own dimensions to build the bed or if there were standard bed sizes in 1937, did I say? Ish, that he built that cabin. I know in my own house, which is an 1898 Victorian, the doorknobs are very low, below my hip level. And people were shorter then. I guess nutrition, genetics have combined to create a higher average size. I have no idea where Chris stood relative to the average of his time, but his bed was short. But the sad thing about his bed is that he built it for 2 people. Him and the wife he never found. He slept alone in that bed until he was 70 years old. And he had some kind of an ailment, and he was self-medicating with turpentine. His friend found him, dead of an apparent heart attack. Took him out, gave him a proper burial. So that's where I slept last night, in Chris Phonograph Nelson's bed. I also failed to attract a wife to sleep with me. Unlike Chris, not a wife I'm looking for. I have a wife. When I decided to canoe the Yukon, she's the first one I invited. It took her less than 12 hours to deliver her hard no response. And the more she's heard from me about this trip, the more convinced she is she's made the exact right decision for her. And I agree with her. Would have been nice to have her with me last night. Would be nice to have her with me right now, sharing in this, the river, the mountains, the sky, the weather, no bugs, the peace. Walt Whitman wrote about the Lake Isle of Innisfree, the Lake Isle of Innisfree, and one of the lines, "I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow." It is slow. I've lost track. Is this my 14th or 15th day on the river? Well, I left the 8th of July, and today's the 25th, so that math I'm capable of. But I took a couple days off here and there. I'd have to add them up. Haven't done that. But in the beginning, it was beautiful. It was scenic. It was exciting. It was thrilling. It was scary. Let's see. It took us, Rudy and I left Whitehorse on the 8th, and we paddled 6 days, including 2 long ones across 30-mile Lake LaBarge. Then we got to Carmack's. Christopher arrived the next morning. Is that right? I think we might have had a day off. And then Christopher arrived the following morning. Yeah, because we got there faster than we thought we would. The river is really fast right now. Christopher arrived the following day after we had had a day off. And unfortunately for all of us, one critical piece of his equipment did not make it onto the shuttle from Whitehorse to Carmack. So we waited another 24 hours until that got there. And then we took off. Anyway, the point of that is only, up until then, we hadn't yet done Five Finger Rapids. The only rapids that you have to go through. About 5 miles after Five Finger Rapids, there's another set of rapids called the Rink Rapids. But if you stay river right, you just watch them go by on your left, which is exactly what we did. But up until the Five Finger Rapids, in addition to beauty, joy of being in the remote Yukon Valley, learning the history, seeing both dilapidated or almost gone towns, and also preserved and restored. Fort Selkirk being the best example of that. But seeing these things and enjoying the trip, but also having a certain amount of low-level stress that we knew we had to get through those Five Finger Rapids. Neither Rudy or I were really experienced canoers when we started this. I had taken one weekend lesson on river canoe safety, and I did a little paddling in my youth on the Racket River with the Methodist youth group, but we were noobs. Christopher's had some river rafting experience. He's also young and fearless. Emphasis on fearless. I don't think he had the stress about the Five Finger Rapids that Rudy and I carried. Anyway, we got through them. It was beautiful. It was fun. I'd go back and do it again in a heartbeat. They were almost too short. But that was, well, day 7 of paddle. I guess I've had 7 more days. Most of them with Rudy and Christopher. It's a big, muscular river. It's a very cold river. If I was to somehow flip this canoe right now, I promise I won't. But if I was to do that, I would have to swim to that shore over there, which is, I'm going to estimate, a quarter mile away. Meanwhile, while it's dragging me downriver at 5 or 6 miles an hour. So I'm not going to get to that shore. I'm going to get to some shore way ahead of me here. And I'm going to have to do it dragging the canoe and all the supplies tied to it with me. Otherwise, when I get to the shore, I will be in the middle of remote nothingness. Soaking wet, hypothermic. No way to build a fire. No change of clothes. No food, no water. The canoe's got to go with me. When it was the 3 of us, if one of us had done that, and maybe something important had become separated from the canoe, like the person, for example. It's possible one of the other members of the group could have come to the rescue. But for the last, now coming up on 170 something miles, I've covered a couple of miles here while I've been yakking. Since Dawson City, it's just me. This is the solo part of my trip. Things are as serious for me as they were for Chris Phonograph Nelson. I can't make a mistake. Almost did this morning. Loading up my canoe after a peaceful night in Chris's cabin. Peaceful. Oh, let me talk about that for a minute. I'm afraid of bears. I've had extended visions in my brain in preparing for this trip of being attacked, mauled, essentially eaten alive by a grizzly bear. I can't get that out of my head. It's like an earworm, but it's a video. And it's not a pleasant one. So now that I'm solo, more than ever, I really don't like camping in my tent on the shore where there might be bears. Now the way we mitigate that is we find a gravel bar, preferably one that doesn't have any vegetation on it at all, so you can see the whole thing. And there's really no reason for a bear to swim out to it, although they easily could. I had a moose swim out to my gravel bar the other night. I thought he was going to take it from me because if he stuck around, I was going to move on, even though it was 12:30 in the morning and I had already paddled a long day. It was going to be his island and I was going to go find another one, but he looked at me, looked around, sniffed the air, and decided, I guess he thought I needed the island more than him, and he let me have it. He turned around, went back in the water, and swam downstream to somewhere else. And I didn't sleep that well that night, even though I was on an island, because now I was afraid another moose would swim out, or a bear. I guess I gave myself 4 hours of sleep in the tent. I was awake probably every hour, looking out what's out there, and then I got off that island and back into the safety of the canoe and paddled on to Chris Nelson's cabin last night. And that cabin has 4 solid log walls, a metal roof. It has 2 windows, but it has thick shutters. And the shutters are studded with sharp nails. They're called bear shutters. And I closed them. And there are 2 doors into the cabin, one into a little vestibule, rough, basically a place to store firewood and little tool bench, and then the main door into the room of the cabin itself. I shut them both, latched them, laid down on Chris's bed where he had been found dead by his friend. Had a great night's sleep. No mosquitoes, no fear of bears. I think I slept 8 hours. I really appreciate these cabins. I really appreciate Chris for building his cabin. And I appreciate the National Park Service for preserving and maintaining them and making them available for public use at no cost. I didn't pay a permit fee to be in this preserve. I didn't even register. Nobody knows I'm here. Anyway, had a great night's sleep. Got out, as I say, about 9 o'clock this morning. Could have stuck around. It was a nice place to hang out. I was reading, doing a little planning for today's paddle, enjoying a couple cups of coffee. But the sun was up and it was warm. The river was flowing by. And I thought, I'm here to paddle this river, not to sit and read books at a cabin. So I'm going to go paddle. So here I am. I'll have cabins now for the next 2 or 3 nights. I haven't decided yet how many more nights there will be in this preserve. Since I started at 9, and it takes about 5 hours to get to the first selected cabin on my list of possible places to stay. I'll be there around 2 to 3 in the afternoon after having paddled like this for 5 hours. I'm not paddling hard. I'm just gently nudging the paddle through the water. 7.4 miles per hour. I do know I'll stop, and I'm going to cook myself a nice lunch there. I have way too much food with me. I'll be done with this trip by Thursday or Friday. It's Sunday. I have enough food for another 10 to 15 days. I thought this trip would be 40 days long. Turns out it's going to be about 18, not counting break days. Some of those 40 days were just in case I had to hunker down through days of rainstorms and high winds. None of that materialized yet, anyway. The forecast looks promising for the rest of the trip. So that cabin, let's say I finish lunch by 4. It's supposed to be a nice cabin, well stocked with firewood. Bigger, lighter, hopefully cleaner. I gotta tell you, the nation's cabin, which is what Chris's cabin is now called, hasn't been cleaned in a while. I could barely clear my nose of dust in the first hour back on the river after I swept the place out when I left. So it's supposed to be a nice cabin, and if I feel like that's where I'm supposed to stay today, that's where I will stay. There's another really, really nice cabin, even nicer, the nicest, big even, like it was a roadhouse. So when this was a road for sled dog teams and what have you, steamboats, about every 10 miles there were these roadhouses, private operators, where you could get a room and a meal. And if I remember right, the one I have on my list that I'm going to go visit is Slavens, S-L-A-V-E-N-S, Slavens Roadhouse, named after the owner, at Coal Creek. And it was a really well-known roadhouse, and in fact, I recommend a book about this area and about life in this area during the time when the white settlers started creating a new definition of what it means to live in this valley for the original native inhabitants. That book is Tisha. I wish I could remember the author right now. It's easy enough to find Tisha. About a school teacher who comes up from Missouri, I think, to teach in a one-room integrated schoolhouse in a gold town near Eagle. It's a historical fiction, fabulously told. Great insight into life up here from all the different perspectives. From an outsider's, from the mining community who thought they were in charge of things now, from the natives. So it's a great book, full of timeless insights into humanity. Highly recommend. Anyway, Slavens Roadhouse is featured in that novel. It was important to have these places because sometimes the temperature would get down to 50 below zero, and your taxi was a dog sled, and you and the driver and the dogs were at risk of all freezing to death. These roadhouses were your only chance of survival in many cases. Anyway, that one is 25 miles past the Candick Roadhouse, which is the one that I expect to get to mid-afternoon. 25 miles I can cover in about 4 hours. So if I leave at 4, I could be at Slavens by 8 p.m. That's attractive. Because what am I going to do otherwise? Sit on my butt at the Candick Roadhouse. There's things to see there. Leftover artifacts of life in those times. Little hikes in bear and mosquito country. Sort of attractive. I have both mosquito netting and bear spray. But I might rather be on the river, so that's probably my plan A at this point. When I woke up this morning, that was my plan B. But I didn't know how beautiful it was going to be today when I made that plan A. It is so beautiful. I'm almost sweating here. I don't know, 70 degrees by now maybe. I don't know if my thermometer is stashed away, I can't tell you. But it's very happy making being here. I think I might want to choose that level of happiness over the happiness of sitting. So that's it, and then after that, it's a 50 some odd mile run from Slavens Roadhouse to the town of Circle. My second to last town on this trip. Small, very small. The last road served town I'll visit on the highway, on the Yukon. I will finish my trip about 70 to 75 miles later in Fort Yukon. There is no road to Fort Yukon. There's only the river and an airstrip. Mostly a native community. One I don't intend to spend a lot of time in. There's no services to speak of. And it's not a dry community like most of the communities up here are. For example, Eagle is dry where I was. Circle, I don't know, but I think it's dry. Fort Yukon is not dry. But many of the surrounding communities are, and so apparently it's popular to fly into Fort Yukon to binge. And I don't need the combination of alcohol, darkness, and freely accessible equipment and food on the canoe among some young folk looking to have a little fun, maybe at my expense. So I'm going to be pretty cautious there. Just try to move through that community expeditiously to the airport, where I'll catch a flight to Fairbanks and then transfer, or let's say book a flight on United direct back to Denver. That's the plan. So all of that will be about 800 miles. Maybe 300 of those solo like this. And I was talking about Walt Whitman. Peace dropping slow. We survived the Five Finger Rapids and had a fabulous another few days together. Got to Dawson. Good old time, great food, cool town. Go there. And then I had to face this next big stress-inducing thing, which is being solo for the first time. Fortunately, it wasn't that bad. I had by then had 12 days of Yukon River paddling. Had a pretty good understanding of the river and myself and the canoe and the maps, all the things. And except for the part about sleeping alone on shore in bear country, I was pretty confident I wasn't going to have any major issues. But it's always a question. And now I'm 70 miles in to my solo section. No, 170 miles. 100 miles to Eagle, another 70 miles since then. Maybe coming up on 175. I don't know. This has been a long chat. But anyway, the point is this. Today, I am fully integrated into the wild. I'm one with it. I know it's a teacher with a very sharp edge. does not tolerate naivety, forgetfulness, stupidity. I mentioned the mistake I almost made this morning, loading the canoe. I was ready to push off. Then I sort of noticed that there was this one space on the canoe that was kind of empty. And I thought, what goes there? I surveyed the canoe. I saw my equipment bag with my tent and sleeping bag and all that stuff. My clothing bag. My sort of emergency supplies bag. My water bag. My day bag behind me. I saw all those things. Check, check, check. Got them. I'm ready to go. But what is that big hole? And fortunately, before I pushed off, because pushing off, that's a final decision. Remember? I'm going to be floating down the river at 6 miles an hour, and whatever I leave behind is going to be staying on land behind me relative to me moving upstream at 6 miles an hour. There's no way back to it. There is a way. That's to park the boat and walk back. I don't know if you can see that shore, but not a pleasant prospect. Probably a day lost. At least half a day. Depends on when you realize what it was you left behind and whether you're going to go back for it. In this case, just before I pushed off, I thought, where's my food? I have a gigantic blue barrel. It's a bear-proof barrel, called a bear barrel. It occupies that one hole in the canoe, and it wasn't in it. I had taken it out last night in an abundance of caution because there is a bear that frequents that cabin. There was a warning sign. And if that bear smelled the food in that barrel and decided to try to get into it, I didn't want it in the canoe at that time. I can survive the loss of the bear barrel. I could get to Fort Yukon without food. I wouldn't like it, but I could do it. But I can't survive the loss of the bear barrel and the canoe. And the clothing that were in the canoe too, because I didn't need them at the cabin. So it would have been catastrophic. So I took the bear barrel out and moved it about 50 yards upriver from the canoe. There was no bear. The barrel was fine. The canoe was fine. The clothing, everything was fine. I was fine. But the bear barrel almost got left behind. That's the kind of mistake I cannot afford to make out here. Anyway, today, for the first time, the piece is fully here. I know I could make a mistake like that one. But I've seen what the river does. And it's frankly hard to imagine it at this point doing anything that would put me in the water. And I've seen me operate now over 18 days. And it's hard to imagine me doing something that would put me in the water. I'm not going to take a nap on the canoe and find myself smashed on some rocks that pop up in the middle of the channel. They do. Passed a couple this morning. That would be devastating to hit. But if you're awake and looking where you're going, you won't hit them. So today, for the first time, I feel like the wild and me are one. I belong here. I feel like I've taken the lessons it has to offer. And I've learned from them without encountering the sharp edge. I've made mistakes. But none of them have been what you would call fatal mistakes, or even serious mistakes. The closer I get to the end, the less risk each mistake carries, because, as I said, I could get there without food at this point. That was not true 2 weeks ago. Even water. As long as I can get to a stream, I can get fresh water. I can't drink this water. This water is seems to be about 10% mud or silt. Can't even filter it with a filter pump. Clogs the pump. So I carry fresh water. But even if I lost that, I could replace that. So the sounds, the sights, the sky, the mountains, the water. Me as part of it. Me moving through it. Me welcomed by it. I feel very much at home today. And it's the first time on the trip I've completely felt that. And I think I get maybe another 2 days of this. I feel less at home when the weather isn't like this. When it's chilly and drizzling, I can still have a great day. But I'm not as integrated. I have to protect myself from it. Today, I can open myself to it. And I've done that. And it's a joyful place to be. And I wanted to say that. That's why I started recording. A little while back, I did some chanting. Something like this. The river will carry your soul. There's more. That's enough. You get the idea. Maybe I've gone feral. I don't know. Or maybe I've gone natural. But I'm here now. It's where I came to be. And I've arrived. And I'm making this video, and I'm making a GoPro time lapse of today. And I'm recording voice notes, songs, ideas, written notes. I have digital logs down to the every 10-second of where I am, how fast I'm going, things like that. And I'm hoping that when I get home to my other home, that somehow I can carry this home with me and integrate it back into that life. I don't want to give up that life. That's a beautiful life of its own. But it's not this life. I don't know if I'll ever have this life again. This is a life of a lifetime. So this is me trying to bottle that. Trying to take what happens up here while I'm doing this and put it here where I'll have it again. Hell, I spent 5-6 minutes just recording this sound. Isn't that a beautiful sound? Talk about peace dropping slow. There's no other sound here than my boat in the water. I don't hear birds. I don't hear wind. I hear an 8 kilohertz whine with a crickets or birds chirping, which is my tinnitus, but I always hear that. But in the outside world, if I stop paddling, I hear nothing. And no matter where I look, there is absolutely no evidence of human existence. I don't know how far I can see. 50 miles in the ahead of me, 50 miles behind me, several miles each side of me. I might be the only eyeballs seeing this today. I have no idea if there's anyone else on this river. Here, I'll just spin around once. Give you the 360. Now I'm facing crosswise to the river. I'm completely turned around now, facing back upriver. That's basically east. Now I'm facing basically north, across the river again. There. That's it. Guess that was an hour. In an hour I covered 6 miles, so maybe I did. That's for you, future me. Hope you like it.